We are jumping into Hacker Hangouts. It is Saturday morning. I'm glad to be here, and we are jumping into NFTs, both the security of them, the security implications of them, and why someone on the internet is complaining that all their apes are gone. And I think what's so funny with that, and again, not funny, the guy in theory lost millions and millions and millions of dollars.
No, it's funny.
Because why have something when you can have nothing? No, let's talk about NFTs. Actually, I think what's so interesting about them is, first, let's talk about the technology of them, like the kind of like how they work. I think this ties into a discussion of Web 1 to Web 2, and now we're into Web 3.0. Let's first start off with like, what is an NFT? Why are they so interesting? And are they the future of blockchain? And should you invest all of your livelihood into them, exactly like Gator does, who will be giving financial advice, legally speaking, on this call?
No.
In no way anything do we say. Please don't hold us liable for pretty much anything we say, because most of it's all made up. Gator, do you want to jump in and kind of just explain what an NFT is for anyone who's coming in and going, I don't know what they're talking about. These guys look goofy. He's wearing an amazing shirt, which I was showing off and I'm very proud of. But what is an NFT?
Okay, it's a non-fungible token. If y'all have not seen this SNL skit, they tried to go through and explain it through lots of different artwork and funny music videos, and there's also debate on what you're actually getting and misinformation on what you're getting when you buy an NFT. With that, I'll throw it over to Gowrie.
They are receipts for JPEGs. That's what an NFT is. It is a receipt. You are buying a receipt. You're not buying the JPEG. You're not buying the rights to anything. You're not buying it. It depends on what the NFT says, but you are buying a receipt. And if that sounds weird and confusing, that's because it's weird and confusing.
And I think, Gulo, do you have anything to add before I launch us into this?
I'm not so sure. So yes, you're buying a receipt, but you're also buying a link. That link is now your very own to look at and to share, but you've got no control over it. So if your NFT, your JPEG accidentally changes for whatever reason, you have no power over that. But you can still share that link because you own that link, even though you can't do anything with it.
Well, I think
And
this is the part which is... And this is the current iteration. Also, can we just take a moment for anyone just listening to the audio and acknowledge Gulo in that shirt? And this whole thing came about because when we pushed the thumbnail, or when I pushed the thumbnail, he zoomed in on it. He's like, am I wearing a tank top? I'm like, yes, that was like the underlying image that I used. He's like, I will be wearing a tank top and my chest hair will be showing. And I'm like, if we have a competition, I am going to win this one. It's going to happen. It's right there. All right. But I think, and this is what was so interesting. Moxie, Gulo shared an article last week on that Moxie had presented. And this was so interesting because when I looked into NFTs and started researching them, I kind of made the assumption when I first heard about NFTs that the data, the image, was stored on the blockchain. And then I realized that would be like way too much data, not necessarily way too much data, but like it might be impractical to have all the images, the full data stream on the blockchain. So I'm like, oh, well, when I started looking at it, I'm like, oh, well, they store a link which points to the image. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But they would definitely have some sort of data hash. So if that image changed or if the server went down, that there would be some sort of hashing mechanism to show that the image changed. And that's not the case either. Ultimately, what exists in the NFT, the minted NFT on the blockchain, is a link, is just a link to wherever it's hosted. And as Moxie went on to show in his article, that link is controlled in a centralized place, which is a server, which is where Web 0.0, and I think this is the next transition. Let's talk about this and then circle back to NFTs, is what is Web 3? Like Web 3.0, this is like the phrase that has been talked about, blockchain decentralization. Who wants to take the pass at first? What was Web 1? Like legitimately, where did we start this entire internet?
Wouldn't that be the DARPANET?
Well,
right? Or where would you guys go?
I mean, Web 1 is pretty simple. Everyone's connecting their stuff to networks, and everyone self-hosts. Everything is, a mishmash of anything, and nothing is largely standardized, right? Web 2.0 is when we get into, social media starting to emerge. Things are centralized. People are using, other people's, the cloud, quote unquote. You're using other people's servers over the internet to do major tasks. I know I'm probably bastardizing this. There's probably a way better definition.
Well, and I think platform. I think for the sake of the art, for what we're talking about right now, platform is going to be the defining term. So platform will be the cloud as a centralized platform to host. DARPANET, every single system was both client and server. You'd run your website, you'd offer hosting, and then we got to the point where like, this is massively limiting us. And like if you pull your computer offline, your connection goes down, that server goes offline. So we shifted to this idea of platforms in Web 2. Gulo?
Web 1 is just servers, just building servers and running your servers. You want a website, you built your own website. You needed to know how to set up the server. You need to know how to connect it to the internet, keep it running, build the actual website. You had to do all these things. And the general public was like, oh, hell no, this is complex. I'm not doing this. And then that's what kind of led more to Web 2.0 with services. I mean, I guess it kind of started with like Angel Fire and GeoCities, where they started allowing you to host your websites on their stuff. And that was kind of the beginnings of Web 2.0, where you now had these companies that were like, hey, you don't have to be a genius to set up your own website to build it. Here's a platform. Here's WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. This is how you build your website. Mm-hmm. And then people started to go from there. So you started getting companies that were now setting up SMTP servers. So Yahoo started setting up their own email, and Hotmail and all these other companies started to build these services that you are now using rather than having to build and run your own.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is that GeoCities was way ahead of its time.
Yes. Way ahead of its time.
Right? Yeah.
Man, GeoCities is a name I haven't heard in years.
Right. So basically, the first stage would then be static. The second page is when things got interactive, or people could put their content online on somebody else's machines, social media, RSS, or things as the such. Right.
I would say Web 2 is where we are right now. Like ultimately, everything's platform based. Like even if you're like massively into self-hosting like Gator is, very, very few people run their own email server. Like Gator loves self-hosting, but most of us don't run our own email server. And even if we did, there's questionable security because all your friends and everyone you're emailing is going to be on Gmail anyway, or some sort of cloud platform anyway. So it's like, are you really gaining security by running your own email server when all the emails you're sending are going to be in plain text anyway? Again, secure protocol and everything like that. But I think now this goes, email was an old protocol, and now we've gone towards better and better and better protocols. And now we're hitting this point of Web 3, Web 3.0, where we're saying everything is blockchain. Everything is moving towards this idea of decentralization. Everything is moving towards this idea where I don't have to rely on a centralized authority. And this is where, let's spin back to NFTs, is when we get back to NFTs moving towards this Web 3.0, you almost start questioning, like, are we actually moving towards a blockchain? Is this really decentralized? Or is this really just back to a better platform? And I won't answer this one. I'll hand it off to Gowrie.
I'll be honest. You're not going to spend very much time on me because to me, Web 3.0 and moving everything to blockchain sounds like fintech programmer nonsense. It just doesn't mean anything as far as I can tell. And granted, like I'm a neophyte, I just learned that Web 3.0 was a term last week on stream. I was like, wait, seriously? Like we're doing this? We're transforming the internet by moving everything to blockchain? What does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just snake oil to get people to invest in businesses that are just bullshit.
So Gowrie just threw the gauntlet. I mean, the gauntlet's been tossed. So Moving things to blockchain, okay. Some things could be better, like hosting contracts. There's a handful of things that are really good for the blockchain. The blockchain is not an abysmal place that is completely worthless to anything and everything. The problem is that for you to have access to the blockchain, you would have to run your own server service, your own server, once again, going back to Web 1.0. And Moxie described this very, very eloquently. And then you're running your own service that now connects to the blockchain to download it so you can view it. Or you have the option to use 1, 2, or 3 of the major providers that give you access to the blockchain and parse that information for you. But they're also limiting that information, and they're able to block information as well. In fact, Moxie in his post was blocked from his own NFT that he created. Still exists on the blockchain, still there. His receipt is still there. The link is still there, but he can no longer see it through his wallet, through the tools, because single companies are the ones that are peddling the snake oil of, we are decentralized, except for you have to use our central service to access the decentralized network.
So I want to elaborate on this one a little bit more, because you bring up a point, and I think there's like nuance there that's worth talking about. In order to, like, let's just say early days of crypto, you wanted to do Bitcoin, you had to download the entire blockchain. Like at early days, it was like 9, 10 gigs. It wasn't actually that big. Is you download the entire thing locally, and then if you wanted to run your own wallet, you kind of had to run your own node. And now what happens is, no one wants to do that. It's impractical to do that. It's too big. So we use third parties like a MetaMask, which is just a browser extension, which you can run your wallet on. And your private keys are stored client side, which is good. That's how it's supposed to be. They're stored safely. They're stored encrypted. But you don't run an entire node. You don't have the full blockchain there. So now when you want to transact, you're using another server. You're using a centralized server. And MetaMask only uses one. I think it's called Infura, something like that. And so anyone using MetaMask, you're not interacting with the blockchain directly. You're interacting with a centralized API. And this is where Gulo, do you have something to add? And I'll jump.
Yeah, this is kind of like this is like brokers. If you go back to the original crypto stuff, if you wanted to trade crypto, yes, you had access to the blockchain, but you couldn't trade crypto without a broker. And then you had things like Mt. Gox that everyone put their wallets and all their crypto on. They robbed everyone blind. The broker crashed, was investigated by the feds, and you lost all your money.
Well, part of that, though, is because you needed, like, the reason you needed a broker was because you needed to convert US dollar. I couldn't get US dollar into my MetaMask wallet. Like, that was one of the reasons, was that I needed to move I needed to connect a bank account in order to get US dollar over to some sort of crypto, but then I could transfer that back out. You're getting a little ahead, but I do want to jump back to that. Can
I point one thing out? Because you mentioned Mt. Gox, and I just learned this the other day, and it's amazing. Mt. Gox should be MTGOX, which its original purpose was the Magic the Gathering online exchange. I'm not kidding. The original purpose of Mt. Gox was to be an online trading website for Magic the Gathering. This should be like mind-blowing for people who are like, hey, oh wait, wow, this really is all bullshit.
Wow. I did not know that. Wow. I want to talk about this. I want to really make sure the point is clear on this idea of MetaMask, because, like, while you are transacting, and this is where the centralization, like the NFT, this is where we're talking about NFTs. You can hold your NFTs inside MetaMask. MetaMask, again, is not actually like a full node. All it's doing is it's referencing a third party. When you transfer your NFT to MetaMask, it's not checking the blockchain directly because you don't have access to that. It is checking OpenSeas. It's querying, your MetaMask is querying OpenSeas. So what happened with Moxie is he had his NFT, he tried to sell, and there's so much story with that one, which I think is so cool, but he put it on OpenSeas. So he saw his NFT in MetaMask, but when OpenSeas removed it, They didn't remove it from the blockchain. They removed it from OpenSeas. Now, MetaMask, when it went to go pull the NFT to show it in his wallet, said, oh, that NFT doesn't exist. It still existed, but because MetaMask is like a centralized client, which uses centralized authorities, effectively it works as you have these single points of failure, almost like Cloudflare or AWS or Azure. You have these massive center of concentration around this crypto space, which really is like, brings it to centralized technology a little bit.
So
wait,
I see this as
big cloud. Sorry, go ahead.
I see this as brokers. Once again, OpenSeas is a broker. They're a broker of information, but they're the ones. So you're registering your NFT with MetaMask, which is fine, and then they're passing the information along to OpenSeas, and OpenSeas is querying, and they're just becoming an information broker. But because they're that information broker, they have access to change things, which comes back to the original like crypto thing of when you were using Magic the Gathering online exchange for your wallets, that was just another broker. Yes, you used it for transferring cryptocurrencies to USD, but you also people were using it to transfer between cryptocurrencies because you needed to have that broker that was actually that interface. And that was a central point of failure. And there were about half dozen when I was big into crypto. And there's less than that now that are managing like the NFTs and managing these blockchains that are supposed to be being Web 3.0. I mean, we're literally, we know that Facebook is a known evil because we know Facebook, but now we have these other centralized services that are peddling millions or billions of dollars worth of receipts through a blockchain that no one knows about. They don't know how it functions. They don't know how it works. And that is incredibly scary because I'm paranoid as is. And now I have an unknown entity that is amassing a lot of power and peddling, well, crap on the internet.
So this kind of gets to the core of why I think I think you have to separate NFTs from cryptocurrency in general, because I think the two are different, even though they're utilizing quote unquote the same technology. They're just applied in different ways. And this is where I think NFTs, I can just, throw the bullshit flag up as a collective, with the exception of something like digital contracts, which I presume we'll talk about in a bit. Because the way NFTs are currently being sold is essentially the same as, if you play an online video game, Call of Duty, whatever, and you buy a skin for your character that applies to your character and is only available for a short amount of time, that's an NFT, right? Like you have the cloud of owning that NFT. The only difference is that with NFTs on the blockchain, you can sell them. And there's technology in there so that like if I minted the NFT, I could get residual income from the resale of my NFT if someone goes and buys it from me and then sells it to someone else, the creator, the minter of the NFT, that technology potentially exists. What Gulo just said was that NFTs and NFT markets are basically fundamentally designed to assist in money laundering. No, seriously, because it's basically the art. It's basically the art market, which everyone knows, but no one can prove, is totally rife with money laundering. It's basically the art market, except that there's no actual art. You're just buying receipts for things instead of the actual thing. And so it's like drilled down to like the plausible deniability of money laundering from the art market, but without having to deal with the actual art. You just launder the money directly, and you claim that your NFT has a high, market price because, there's only one of them. It's a one of. It's like a one of sports card that you're the only person that owns it, right? Well, I have a one of NFT that no one else owns, therefore it's worth $1 million. Oh no, someone stole it. Let me claim my insurance. Let me commit some insurance fraud while I'm at it.
Well, so you mentioned, hold on, I want to jump into this. You mentioned something which I thought was so interesting, is this idea that if you mint the NFT, you get the residual income. It can't, and here's what's interesting about that. That's not part of the protocol. It's becoming part of the protocol. Like there's now been decisions of whether or not in the new version of NFT tokens, like how that actually works. But this comes down to why this is so interesting. Because OpenSeas has their policy of how those ongoing revenues work. I think it's around 10%. But another one's going to have 1%. And Binance, who has their NFT, is now like 1% because it opens up. And it's not controlled by the blockchain, because here's what's interesting. You have the blockchain underlying technology, which is ultimately going to move really, really slow because it requires forking or soft forking or protocol change. And when you have a centralized authority like OpenSeas, they can move a lot faster. It's their development. They own it. They can control it. And because of that, you now get all these crazy advancements. Like I do believe, honestly, if OpenSeas had no like blockchain and its functionality, it's an eBay for JPEGs, and it would never have succeeded. The thing what they did is they leveraged this technology, one, because it's a hot thing right now. It's a gold rush. But they started adding additional functionality on top of what is the fundamental technology. Like if I spin up an NFT site with just the underlying technology, I am massively limited by it. Like there is no ability right now within the technology to do these ongoing revenue streams, to do transactions, to have money automatically go back to whatever wallet minted the NFT. Those are all additional functionalities which are centralized and owned by whatever authority is selling the NFTs.
There was one point that I wanted to hop on, and that was the how funds inside of a game, how tokens inside of a game would be NFTs. And it's kind of, this is also money laundering 3.0 for games. So back in the day, when you went to like the old school pop-up arcades and you played like Simpsons or Pac-Man or something, those arcades were money laundering arcades. They were run by usually the mobs, and they would be money laundering because they were washing all the coins and all the money through something like that. We're kind of like the laundromats. But as technology advanced, that was money laundering 1.0. Money laundering 2.0 was, as Silk just said it, when you now have NFTs or tokens inside of a game, you can sell those on eBay. And that was a huge market, and it's still a huge market, where you can buy and sell random items that you get in games online, and people do use that for money laundering. And now we have actual NFTs that are stored on, we have actual receipts for JPEGs that are considered NFTs that are stored in a blockchain that people are bidding on themselves. So I could take my whatever monkey that hasn't been stolen yet, and I can say that it's worth $500, and then I can buy it from myself for $500. One, I'm cleaning money. Two, I'm artificially inflating the value of it. And when that happens, then I can try selling it for $1,000. If no one bids on it, then I bid $1,000. I buy it back, and I'm only losing a couple of points off the top to pay OpenSeas or whatever is doing that. The other major problem with NFTs is we are taking a digital technology and we're making it resource constrained. Why is it that I need to own that one single monkey that's a digital file, even though I just own the receipt of it? Why do I need to own that? There's no scarcity for it. We're generating our own scarcity, which is going to drive the market up, which turns this whole thing into a giant pyramid scheme that's eventually going to crumble and explode. And people are going to be like, how did I lose $10 million today?
I think early days, it became really interesting because early days of NFTs, the way they advertised it was whoever minted the NFT would get residual income from whoever bought it. And then whoever bought it would then get a portion of that residual income, and then anyone who bought it after that would have it. And they're like, and it's the strongest way to earn money online. A triangle. We can call it a pyramid, but that would be really, really right on the nose.
It's an upside down funnel. Well, all of the money returns to the source.
But it's not like we have any other businesses that are doing that currently right now, right? Yeah. None. We're just not going to drop any names because reasons, right? But the other thing that really drives home on this is that everybody talks about making sure this is decentralized, and we've seen again and again to where this just is not being built that way. That may have been how it started. That may have been how it intended to be used. but we're now getting back to being completely dependent on one or two sources. And then, hey, when Mt. Gox shuts down or somebody else's apes get stolen from one location, it's like, are we really building Web 3.0, or are we just doing the same thing that we've done in the past?
But this is what this is what I think we're arguing, though, is like, sure, we can talk about decentralization all you want, but who's running the servers? Like, there's a reason why we moved to Web 2.0 with platforms. No one wants to run their own servers. And that's not like an accusation, like no one wants to run them. You have to run your own. No one should be running their servers. There's a reason why AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud have taken off, because no one wants to run infrastructure to accomplish every one of their daily tasks. I think the thing which concerns me is when you have like MetaMask, like the whole idea behind NFTs is there is not a lot of security between, like, all right, MetaMask is going to do a transaction. It's going to query to OpenSeas to find out and visualize your NFT. One, there's a couple problems here. One of them is that NFT, because it's querying through the API, that NFT is ultimately just a link. It's a link to a resource, and that resource can change. It also can change on whoever's querying it. You can do regional. Your NFT might look different than whoever, depending on who's ever accessing it, because you could. That's exactly what Moxie did. He said, okay, if you're coming from this region, it's going to look this way. If you're going to come from this region, you're going to present this image. But ultimately, like MetaMask is going to centralize authorities. And while I there's a couple things here. I think I lost my train of thought. It was going somewhere. I think the centralization, especially when it comes to no, I'll start there. No one wants to run their own servers, and I think that's completely okay. Like, I think that's completely fine.
So I realized that we've been talking about the all my apes are gone without actually introducing it. So let's talk about this for a second. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Vice posted an article on a guy that bought a bunch of ape JPEGs on NFTs. So receipts for a bunch of ape JPEGs. And then I believe he had his wallet stolen. So I believe that's what the situation was, or someone accessed his wallet and then put all of his NFTs up on OpenSea, and then the scammers went in and snapped them up really quickly for like next to no money. So that's what happened. And the guy who had this stolen, he bought these JPEGs for $2.3 million. Or sorry, he bought the NFTs for these JPEGs for $2.3 million. If that's not money laundering, I don't know what is, right? Like this is the most blatant money laundering situation I've ever seen in my life. But let's give him the presumption of doubt and just assume like he's just an idiot. So he gets this stolen, and then he went to OpenSea and was like, I need you to freeze these transactions. I need you to delist these NFTs from the market because those are my NFTs and they were stolen. And what Silk is alluding to here is that if I'm on the blockchain, and we're going to get into crypto here real quick, but if I'm on the blockchain trading cryptocurrency and someone gets access to my wallet because I did something wrong, or the centralized service was hacked, or whatever, someone gets access to my private keys, I don't have any recourse, right? Because there is no centralized anything for this for me to go to have this work. Well, now there is. I can go to the exchange that someone has listed these NFTs on and say, please delist these because they were stolen. Well, are we really decentralized then? Is this actually like an appropriate application of blockchain technology here? If I can go to a centralized thing, and of course the community here was trying to laugh at him, but then OpenSea took down those transactions, so no one could post those things on OpenSea because it was known stolen.
Because this hits the point I wanted to, so I'm jumping back in here, which is OpenSea was able to they didn't remove them from the blockchain. Like, they're still there on the blockchain. They just stopped them from showing up on OpenSeas because they wanted to stop the transaction. But here's the thing: is because MetaMask, it uses OpenSeas, all those NFTs disappeared from the wallet because MetaMask isn't querying the blockchain; it's querying OpenSeas. So when OpenSeas removed them, effectively they removed them from MetaMask. And this isn't just MetaMask; this is almost any wallet. If you don't run a full node, is using a centralized authority, and those centralized authorities they exist for really good reasons, but they do control it. They exist for very good reasons, such as they add additional protections, additional layers, additional features on top. But also, the whole purpose of decentralization was or one of the reasons was for anonymization, which you don't get when you're going and querying a central authority. You want to know the scariest thing of MetaMask is they use the exact same session tokens, even if you have separate wallets. So if you have wallet A and wallet B in a single MetaMask, when it's querying in Fura or any of these other third parties, it's using the same session ID. So they know you have 4 wallets in your MetaMask. They know it's all coming from one person. And they keep analytics on all of these things. Like, the more the more we call it decentralization, it's really not when we're relying on all the different third parties to really centralize it.
So there's the issue here. One of the big issues here is all of that information still exists on the blockchain. The dude who lost his apes does not own his apes according to the blockchain. All OpenSea is doing is parsing out that information from the blockchain. There's no way for him to ever own those again unless the person who stole them or somebody who had access to that wallet puts in another transaction onto the blockchain that allows it. So if I were to set up my own node on the blockchain to read the blockchain, that guy still would not own his apes. Those apes are gone. They belong to somebody else, and there's no way for us to override that. There's no real way for us to fix it. So all we're doing is we're hiding the fact that it actually happened, and they can do that for just about anything or everything. On the flip side, they could just mint new apes, post them onto the blockchain as those replacement apes. But then again, is that still the same thing or is that different? Because now we're taking the artificial scarcity that we created with those single apes and we're adding in things that weren't there before. So that artificial scarcity now goes away. So that should, in theory, decrease the value of those apes.
So this comes down to the thing that gets us straight into cryptocurrency, which is what happens, right, when a big event occurs and we need to roll back transactions. And you don't have to pontificate about this. This happened, right? Ethereum and Ethereum Classic are an example of what happens when the majority of people decide, oh crap, Mt. Gox got hacked, right? It might have been Mt. Gox. It might have been another service. I think it was Mt. Gox.
Nope. It was for Ethereum Classic. It was actually a hacker who stole, I think it was 5 to 8% of all Ethereum.
Yeah.
I think that was it. I know that happened on Bitcoin as well for the owner of Binance had I think it was 5 to 8% of all Bitcoin was stolen at the time.
Yeah. So what happened here is with Ethereum, is this what caused Bitcoin Cash too?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
No. That was
so.
Then
I don't want to confuse
this.
I don't want to
confuse
this.
Ethereum and Ethereum Classic.
Ethereum. So what happened was, collectively, the chain, or at least a sufficient number of the miners, agreed to fork and basically say we're going to roll back these transactions and start from before this hack occurred, and that's what became Ethereum today. And Ethereum Classic is that original blockchain where all of that theft is still on the blockchain, right? And so this is what happens with crypto when a theft like this can occur. You can either say, well, you're SOL, or the community collectively decide to fork and roll back the transactions. In the situation with NFTs, if you're able to go to a centralized source like OpenSea and just be like, hey, can you delist those NFTs and we'll mint new ones, and then we'll just ban this one from the market. Well, now you have reduced the benefit of having to go to the community and say, can we please fork to roll back these transactions, is functionally that everyone gets a vote. That's why it's, democratization, quote unquote, which, I don't want to get into. But when you have a centralized source like OpenSea, you're just subverting the entire reason for the technology to exist in the first place. Why not just have a central bank in that case that mints money? That's what it is.
Huh. That's weird that you say that.
We're literally giving them all of the power over all of the money, all of the NFTs, over the I wouldn't say the blockchain because they're just an information broker. But if everyone is basing their transactions off of what OpenSeas is giving, then in theory, that makes them the blockchain. Yes, we can go through and verify these things, but if they keep forking things off and changing information that is being displayed, then they are now the blockchain and we are no longer decentralized at all. It's we've given the power, money, and everything to a single entity that can do whatever they want. The whole point of blockchain were so that everyone could see and have access to everything all at the same time. But we've learned that human nature, one, we don't play well with others, so we steal and break things all the time. And because of that, we're having to fork things, we're having to try to delete transactions or remove transactions from the history because of the things that we do. And this isn't necessarily a problem with the technology, it's a problem with how the technology is applied to an imperfect, well, human.
Well, this is the other piece of this too, is ultimately the protocol and the technology itself. Again, I know everyone's saying with NFTs, they're like, oh, well, it's new technology. Blockchain is new technology. It's like, it's over a decade old at this point. Like, it's not new. Like, yeah, some of the new concepts exist and new ways to scam people out of money, like, exist on it. But at the end of the day, a lot of this is old technology. And what's interesting is because it's old technology, that custom code sitting on top, whether it's NFCs, whether it's NFTs, whether it's Binance and Coinbase and what they're doing, like that, them building their own protocols on top of this is what has made it as efficient as it has. Like if you had to transact like if you do trading and you had to transact every transaction on the chain through a decentralized exchange, it is remarkably slow. So what Coinbase and Binance does is they have dark pools. They have their own chains that manage all these transactions at the back end and then resync them up. So like when you're on Binance, when you're on Coinbase and you buy and sell Bitcoin, you're not really buying and selling Bitcoin in the back end. Yes, you can transfer it out and whatnot, but the actual transaction doesn't happen on the blockchain. It happens in their dark pools and then they sync them up. That's why if you watch the chain, when you do you move buy and sell one Bitcoin on Coinbase, it doesn't show up on the blockchain. It shows up in any number of thousands of transactions when Coinbase transacts whenever they want to.
Which this is actually exactly how stockbrokers work, right? If I go to, Fidelity or whatever, and I go to my brokerage account, if I buy a stock to something, Fidelity decides, am I going to throw this on the actual market or am I going to take the other side of this trade? It's not actually front running it. There's reasons, there's other reasons or other mechanisms in place that allow them to do this. But it's the exact same thing. So Gula, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say was it's exactly how the stock market works. I'd also argue that's how the banking system and like credit cards and stuff work is the system takes so long to process for transacting the actual money that they're using a dark pool on the back end and it sits in kind of a escrow for a lack of my ignorance on what it's called. Or because of my ignorance for what it's called, it sits in kind of an escrow until it can actually transact on the back end, which in theory would be a blockchain. But because of that, everyone who's arguing that the blockchain is going to remove all of the corruption, all of the downsides to the current monetary systems, it's doing the exact same thing as the current monetary systems. We literally built the same thing and we called it something different.
And then haven't regulated it. So you can still very much lose your entire livelihood with no recourse whatsoever.
So I think one of the important
Ethereum
things
Classic.
Okay, one of the things that we want to make sure to drive home here is don't invest in something that you don't understand, right? So if you don't understand it, don't throw money at it. And you should be studying on how you can become. Go ahead, Gulo. You're jumping in.
It's not necessarily you don't invest if you don't understand it. You don't have to understand the blockchain and the mechanics to make money there. You have to understand how people function and what people were going to do. pyramid schemes weren't about selling a technology. They were about selling an ideal. And as long as you can sell that ideal, you can make money no matter what the underlying technology is.
Yes, completely true.
It's an upside down
I
funnel
agree with that.
scheme. Let's get it right.
I think that's the thing is, I would agree. I think there is money to be made within NFTs. But here's the funny part is I think that people were making like the most money with NFTs. Like even if you go online, you watch like, any of these videos where people are buying and trading NFTs, like they legitimately don't care at all about the underlying technology. Like they don't care that the fact that it's decentralized or centralized. If you went through and explained to them, like you're buying and selling a receipt, you're buying and selling a link that might go away, they don't care. The underlying technology doesn't matter because it's a means to make money. And I'm okay with that. Like legitimately, I have no problem with that. If you want to buy and sell NFTs, just understand that like it's not you don't need it to be like this is part of it. It doesn't need to be decentralized to have it have value. I think that's one of the things with OpenSeas is they have created a marketplace for NFTs, which yes, why buy something when you can buy a nothing? Like I think that was what Gowrie said, and it's so pertinent. But it doesn't matter whether it's centralized or decentralized. Like if OpenSeas was just a JPEG store, it would have never taken off. I really do believe that.
If you want to know something crazy, like if you want to, do you guys know what the biggest NFT market is right now?
No.
It's Roblox.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
It's Roblox. Roblox has an entire market of like things that they mint and then sell, and then you can trade and sell to people for the Roblox money. And there's like Roblox money that you can actually cash out into real cash, right? Roblox, the children's video game, is the largest NFT market, and it's entirely unregulated, right? That should terrify everyone.
Here's the issue, right? Now, if we're going to redefine it to where it's any digital item that you buy for money, so that means that any of the third party or the whenever, like what EA got in trouble for when it came to their loot boxes, when it came to you buying X amount and then you getting digital goods for that. If you're doing Fortnite with their V-Bucks, where does that term start and end? Or are we redefining it at this point is the real question.
So I think the biggest thing that the difference is between like a Call of Duty or whatever is that you need to be able to resell these tokens, right? Like,
okay, so
right.
More like
so if
EVE
there's
Online.
if there's a way for you to resell these tokens, and this is why, like, talking about this idea has been around for a very, very long time, right? It, like predates blockchain completely, because MMOs have been around for a very long time. We just called it real money traders, RMTs. Or gold sellers, if you've played EverQuest and all of those things, people have been reselling digital currency and digital tokens for a very, very long time. Predates blockchain. And so I consider all of these things NFTs, with the exception that now we've applied blockchain to them, where you have a digital receipt for it, so you can actually track, who owned it at some point, which I want to get into that. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
So this is kind of off topic, kind of on topic. So we have digital things. If I go back to like World of Warcraft, and I find a rare sword of something somewhere, and there's only X amount of these. I'm going back to scarcity. One of the things that drives me absolutely crazy about NFTs are these are digital assets. Why are we trying to create scarcity for digital assets that can be copied billions of times over with negligible effects anywhere?
But the receipt is scarce.
Unless you buy it at CVS. My gosh, can we talk about that next?
I'm going to develop an eye twitch with the receipts. But so with something like World of Warcraft, I can understand scarcity a bit in the fact that, yes, it's digitally scarce because it's an item that was only minted so many times because it has a particular use to it. I'm having problems, and maybe you guys can help. I'm having problems justifying that version of scarcity with the version of scarcity of buying JPEGs. Granted, I think the apes that everyone's buying are absolutely ugly. It's horrible art, but I have no artistic anything. I buy things that I think look good, and they may look crappy to others. How do we justify scarcity of what they're doing versus what we've been doing in the gaming industry for decades?
Can I run this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, because I think we're going to have a hard time probably agreeing one way or another on that statement, where I think this tech, and this is a good pivot point, right? It turns into the contracts thing, right? If I have a receipt for a contract and I can pass that along and show, history of it in a recorded manner. So, for example, the girl there's a meme that got sold for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. The girl standing in front of the burning house. They sold the rights to that photo as an NFT. So the rights to utilize that photo for monetization, because it's got somebody's likeness in it, that copyright was sold via an NFT, and someone owns the receipt for that on an NFT. And so this gets into rights management, where I can now transfer rights and have a provable transfer in a public manner of those rights, and I can track ownership along the way. Now, do I think that? Hold on, do I think that's a applicable application, or a good application of the technology? I think that's a fantastic application of the technology. Is anyone going to agree? I don't know the answer to this. Is anyone really going to agree that selling the receipt for the sale of a JPEG, but not necessarily the rights to that JPEG as a copyright, as an NFT? I don't know that anyone's going to agree that that's a good idea. I think that's just bullshit.
Mind you, hold on, not the JPEG. A link to the JPEG. Like, that is such an important thing. It's not, now, there are ways to mint an NFT where the data that JPEG, it gets on the blockchain. But we're not talking about buying and selling. OpenSea specifically is you are buying and selling a receipt which contains a link with zero hashing to confirm the image hasn't changed. Like, that alone is ridiculous to me. The fact that, like, again, I know we've talked about this one before, but I am going to hammer this one home. You are not buying and selling the JPEG. You are buying and selling a link which has zero hash on it to an image which may change, which may not even be hosted anymore. So, like, that the item can go away, but I guess the receipt is there. But jumping back to the smart contracts, I do think there are uses for this technology. But here's where it becomes so much difficult, is because you still need to create a centralized layer on top of it for people to interact with it. Not everyone is going to run their own entire node.
Yeah. Gulo,
so,
I think. Go ahead.
One of the points that Gower's making about the smart contracts, yes, we can do smart contracts that way. And yes, that would be a good way of doing things and handling some of those events, some of those issues. The problem is that people are now taking NFTs of public images, and they're now buying those and saying that they own those. And now they're starting to fight. Like, now there's people that are suing over copyright, saying, hey, I own the Applebee's logo because I'm Applebee's. And the NFT owner's like, no, I own the link to a JPEG because I bought the receipt to this. So now I own this. And now there's wars that are going on over that. It's kind of like the domain wars of domain squatters. They would go out and they'd buy a domain name as something that was going to become popular and try to sell it on later. Up until last week or the week before, I was going to start minting NFTs of some of my images, some of the art stuff that I have that I want to make sure that I continue to be the owner of. But the fact, to Sook's point, it's not a hash. I don't own the JPEG. I don't own the image. I'm buying the receipt that points to a freaking link on the internet that can change at any point in time, and no one can verify that it's changed or that it's been broken or anything, because it is all centralized in this one stupid section by an information broker that can screw everyone over.
Yeah, hold on. Let's bring this to its full fruition. You own a link without a hash to a centralized, all of that. You own a link inside on the blockchain. You own a link which points to an item which may or may not be there, which may or may not change. But in order to view and access that unless you own a full node. You're going to use MetaMask, which is then going to go to a centralized authority. And here's what's so funny about this. Any of those links along the way, any of those breaks, your NFT is inaccessible.
Forever.
Baffling.
So this is kind of I think we all are in agreement. Like it's hard to continue talking trash about this particular application of the idea and technology when we're just rehashing, if you will, the same arguments. What I want to get into is this smart contract. I want to get into a good application of this.
Yes.
In
please.
its current situation, right? It would suffer from the same problems where you still have a centralized authority that you have to go to manage these things. How do we see this evolving in the future? So one of the things that I think is kind of cool, someone talked about, you can't really track who has the rights to music at the moment, rights to own and like copy and make, copies of, personal copies. Like ripping a CD is, I think, technically legal, but it's still sort of a kind of gray area depending on who has access to your computer or things like that, because you're doing medium shifting. There's this idea of, instead of buying a physical CD, right, I buy an NFT that says I have the rights to a copy of that CD, and now it doesn't matter how I obtain the music, I have the rights to it. I have the rights to have a copy of it, as opposed to minting copies of it. I think that's a really cool idea, because it allows for, and then I have the ability to resell the rights to that, so that someone else can do it. And then you have that built in, like, oh, well, the original artist might get a kickback for that because you're reselling their work. Yep. I think this is a cool application of the technology.
So I agree with that. And I actually think that is a fantastic use for the technology, but I question how much different that is from the current NFT schemes. And this is going back to like Apple and Amazon, where I can buy a digital video from Amazon or I can buy it from Apple. And when they lose the rights to that video, they remove that video from my library, even though I already bought rights to it. We still have to have some centralized where do I acquire that music? Where do I acquire that video from?
Right. So, and this is why I was saying that I think the cool application, and I think the reason why this is a cool idea is because it resolves this issue of copyright infringement from the perspective of the consumer. If I have a wallet full of receipts that shows I own the rights to have a copy of this somewhere on my computer anywhere, it doesn't matter how I obtain it. Right, I have the rights to that thing, so I could buy that receipt, if you will, from Amazon, but then I could obtain it from any marketplace that has access to it, so long as I can present the receipt.
But let's bring this to actually where I think it's very similar in the same sense, but maybe something like a little bit more tangible, which is your house title. If you own a house, you have title to that house, and owning all those titles on a blockchain, which shows that I own this. Like, this is my title, it's in my wallet. But using, whether it's music or whether it's like a house title, how long before we have to hard fork the chain till an Ethereum Classic happens and we go, oh my gosh, everyone's house just got stolen because someone had a flaw in their smart contract? Like, I have a video talking about how Bitcoin gets hacked. Bitcoin gets hacked all the time. Like, all the time. Now, the protocol itself, people are like, oh yeah, but no, Bitcoin doesn't get hacked. Bitcoin gets hacked all the time. Sure, not the protocol, but most wallets have gotten hacked. Transactions, third parties. Like, this is the whole purpose of like MetaMask using a centralized authority. They use a standard protocol. They use HTTPS. I could easily just man the middle of that and mess with transactions because they have to use a centralized authority. Sure, pre-signing, things like that. But NFTs don't use a big signing authority. I can just like change the URL in some ways because there's an implementation mask. Or guess what? Just like Log4j, they use a third party out online. Smart contracts. That's how Ethereum Classic was, or Ethereum was hacked because there was a problem within the smart contract. It gets hacked all the time. And how long, if we do this new person of technology, selling title, selling digital rights, where you go, yep, time to fork. Let's fork it. We have to undo everything that just happened.
So
Yeah.
Mount Gox. I'm not bitter about this. I'm not angry because I don't really care that much. I didn't lose anything when when Mount Gox went under. They took my Litecoin wallet with them, where I had several thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Litecoins. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars when Mount Gox went under. It just all of it disappeared. It's all gone. All of that time, I didn't really put that much money into it. I invested about 1,000 and I made way more than that on that. But everything that I had set up, everything that I had disappeared. I have my own wallets that have Bitcoins in them. I have my own wallets that have Litecoins in them as well. But for me to trade and use those, I have to put them into a centralized location. If that centralized location, that broker goes under, gets arrested, whatever, all of that disappears and I no longer have access to it. And perfect example, hundreds of thousands of dollars gone because a broker screwed up.
Yeah, the kicker is like that's where the technology has been advancing. When we're talking about crypto, like there are decentralized exchanges where your private keys don't go and they transact everything through smart contracts. So I can make trades with other individuals without ever giving up my private key. But this is where I think crypto and NFTs like completely split. Like a lot of the technology has been built to transact through smart contracts. NFT is not so much. Even the concept, and again, I think we're going back. I want to make sure we're keeping on like what is the future of this technology. But I don't think NFTs really hit the same way because crypto, decentralized exchanges, NFTs kind of requires some of that because the main core of the functionality it exists within their own code, like not blockchain code. Something as simple as the whole purpose of NFTs, like the main one everyone screams about, is so that the artist gets paid for their work. That whole revenue, the 10%, isn't built on the chain yet, or isn't built within the blockchain technology yet. Gator?
Instead of us just old man yelling at cloud because this is something new, we want to make sure that this is actually doing what they're advertising. And that's the problem, is that there's so much hype of what could be versus what currently is. In the current iteration, it's not doing all the things that they're talking about. Yes, I absolutely want to support the end artist. That's why, to be honest with you, every single song, me growing up, I missed the whole LimeWire thing. I bought every single one of my digital songs from Apple, from Amazon, and all these places because I wanted to support the artist. Then I found out about like Bandcamp. So then I can go directly to that person and they're getting a much larger cut. Supporting the artist, I think we're all there wanting to do. I see other pros with the possibilities of NFTs saying that, hey, if you get a digitized ticket of saying that you were there, so more of proof of, there's the proof of stake and proof of what? What's the two things when it comes to mining?
Work.
Proof of work, right?
Proof of work, proof of stake.
So if you do proof of stake and say, hey, like if DEF CON was going to start minting NFTs for people going there, and you pay your $200, and much like what I posted an article here in the chat, AMC and Sony teamed up and did this for the people who went and saw Spider-Man on day one this December. So that's an interesting use of it, but it's not worth anything other than saying, hey, I was there that first night.
Yeah, and their stock price went up because they mentioned the words NFT or blockchain.
It's worth whatever the market will pay you for that thing.
There's two parts to this. The first one is you asked where this is going to end. This is going to end in a crash with a crater. I don't see any way around it. But I also want to specify. So we've been bashing NFTs and how it's being implemented in Web 3.0 this entire time. This is what the security community, this is what the open source community does. We are yelling at the technology with how it's being implemented and how it's being used because we disagree with how it's being used. Right now, it's being used by script kiddies to make a crap ton of money as quickly as they can. They're not developing the technology the way it should be, and we're calling them out. And the fact that we're calling them out means we're trying to help push the technology forward. We're not trying to remove it. We're saying, these are the problems we see. These are possible solutions or possible implementations we could do. How do we get from point A to point B? Yes, we're going to argue. Yes, we're going to fight. but we're actually trying to help the communities grow. Even though I don't think any of us have NFTs, I don't think any of us are funding them or anything along those lines because, well, we think it's a waste of time and money and it's a giant upside down pyramid scheme.
Upside down funnel. Upside down funnel.
Good Lord.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up here. Like the reason why I'm, old man yelling at blockchain here is because it's being sold in a way that can hurt people, right? Like if a bunch of people are like, this is actually worth something, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling, that are looking for a get rich quick scheme, right? And they're going to see these NFTs and they're going to say, if I buy this $10 one, it's going to go up and then I'm going to be able to resell it. They're going to see examples of these guys, or girls spending $2.3 million on some receipts for ape JPEGs and then reselling them for $5 million later. And to me, that's like an indication that money laundering is happening, not that wealth is being made, or wealth is being made illicitly, rather. But there's plausible deniability built in. People are going to see this and say like, oh, this is the future of it because those tech guys are smart and they've got this figured out. And, that's all the money is in tech. The thing that worries me is this is going real fast and you have to look at them for what they are. They are speculative instruments that can only make you money if the market continues to exist. So as soon as the hive mind of the internet goes, oh, wait a minute, this is bullshit, and walks away, whoever's holding the NFTs, they're the ones left holding the bag. They just lost their money. They're holding a bunch of worthless receipts for random things. That's where I think, that's me being old man yells at blockchain. Other than that, I think there's, like Gula said, I think there's great applications for this. There's ways to use it. We just haven't seen the perfect iteration of it yet. If we ever will.
I have the perfect iteration. I thought of this. I got it. It's amazing. Norton, if you're watching, because I know you watch my stream and you're gonna I'm giving you an idea. Norton came out with this ability in their latest iteration of their Norton 360 product where you could mine crypto. I did a whole video on it because I'm so excited about it because I think it's the worst idea ever because they take 15%. Like even if it just works perfect, even if it's the best miner ever, like you never make any money on it. But Norton, you're missing your opportunity with NFTs. You have an antivirus, right? You now detect an antivirus. Like we have proof of stake. We have proof of work, but I got something better for you. Virus gets on your system. You mint an NFT for that virus and then delete the virus. Effectively, you now have a link to a virus which is no longer on your system, right? Go with me. Hold on. And now you have the receipt of that virus, which is no longer there. It's deleted. You mint an NFT of that virus. Hold on. And you call it proof of ownage. That's the solution. Norton, we can team up on this. I can sell it. You can sponsor the whole. And the stream was brought to you by the greatest VPN technology of all or Earth, Norton VPN. No, I'm just kidding. Please no. Proof of ownage. It's gonna be a thing. Proof of ownage. We have proof of stake. We have proof of work. Now we have proof of ownage.
That means that the antivirus companies can actually take part in both the transactions because the proof of ownage isn't valuable to the person being owned. The proof of ownage is valuable to the person doing the ownage, right? Or actually doing the hack. So basically Norton can basically charge you to protect you from viruses, but then also sell the people that are doing the hacking a receipt that says, here's how many things you managed to hack. That's valuable because that's basically, I have a receipt now that I can walk up to, black market people and be like, look, I've owned all of these machines.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, and they buy it from Norton. You don't actually own the You don't actually own the NFT. You minted it, but you don't actually own it. You have to buy it from Norton. And Norton can be a marketplace. I'm telling you right now, I think I have struck gold on this idea. Oh, I think that's it. With that, let's do our rounds. Gator, what else do you got for us?
I don't think I had anything fun in my coffee cup to have the ending of the stream be that. So that's yeah. Okay. Well, it's time for folks to go study up on stuff. make sure that you're at least understanding a little bit of what you're trying to invest in. By the way, this was not investing advice by any one of us. This is interesting technology that could do really cool things in the future. So while I'm cautiously optimistic, because I hate FUD and just buzz phrases, right? Crypto and cyber, and you put that in front of everything else. Nah. So if you're interested in something, go study about it. Go learn something new, and make sure to go love your hacker family.
NFTs are bullshit. Gulo?
We are all going to hell.
As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. Hopefully you got something out of it. Invest. Proof of ownage. It's totally going to be a thing. Thanks for watching, and hack on.